Good.
A bit tired, but not because it's late, but because I have had to work so much today from morning to night.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, don't
You
be
want to you
sorry.
want to take my place?
No, you are working much more than me, I guess.
I Oh gosh.
Oh, it's this office work, the whole day sitting, writing, doing that first for the university,
Oh.
then for the foundation we have in Switzerland. You know that we have a foundation, and I have to make all this bureaucratic stuff for it. I'm the president of it. So this is a little bit exhausting, but nevertheless, weather is fine, and I'm fine.
Uh-huh.
Good.
So you are a writer, you're a artist, you're a
No,
um,
I'm the little asshole of the big boss.
Okay, guys, I'd like to introduce the show here. This is Community and Technology, our Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020 edition. And today we are doing our monthly streamcast focused on UBI, Unconditional Basic Income. And we have our celebrity panel headed by Miss Diana Blackwell, who's the Public Housing Tenant Association President, Fred Samuels, and also President of the PSA 6 Community Council. Diana's been very active community advocate in Central, really throughout Harlem, and a tireless advocate for universal or unconditional basic income, having brought it to the attention of Community and Technology about 6, 7, maybe even 9 months ago. So welcome back, Diana.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And of course, we're also joined by Enno Schmidt, who is streaming in from Switzerland. Well, he's from Switzerland. He's the co-founder of the Basic Income Initiative and the Referendum on Basic Income in Switzerland, author of the film Basic Income, A Cultural Impulse, and currently at the University of Freiburg in Germany, where he's helping to set up the Freiburg Institute for Basic Income. Welcome back, Enno.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. So it's been about a month since we were last all together talking about UBI. It seems like so much has happened in that time. In addition to the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic,
Oh.
just over the last week, we've had another outbreak of racial terrorism, if you will, here in the United States, with the police killing in Minneapolis, Minnesota, of an unarmed black man that they held in custody, and I mean it's difficult for me to even talk about it, Diana. Just, having looked at it, I couldn't see it more than twice. It was just sickening watching this police officer just snuff the life out of this black man. Before you came on, I was talking with Enno. I was saying, well, one thing, try and find something positive out of all of this ugly negativity. And I heard George Floyd's daughter, very young daughter, on TV this morning saying that her daddy was changing the world. So in my mind, I'm trying to focus on the consciousness raising. And I'm looking around at all the folks, especially the white folks that are marching all across the country in the name of Black Lives Matters. And I'm hoping that this consciousness raising is going to have a really transformative effect on things here in the U.S. But what are your observations, Diana?
Well, I just got off of a very quick text with our Facebook Messenger with one of my friends from Denmark, and her daughter basically demanded that she be at the U.S. Embassy on Sunday with her as they protest and support Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about whites across the world who are actually supporting us. So my thoughts are it is world changing for the youth, and the youth are grabbing us and telling us to look at what the world can be.
Mhm.
So I'm looking at the youth. They're our hope. They're our future, and they're our hope. You know, this
Mhm.
is the good thing it's going to bring out. I think it's going to be the youth that are going to change everything.
Mhm. Enno, from your viewpoint over in Europe, how do you see what's going on over here?
Well, in Europe, the reports about the United States are always criticizing Donald Trump and his kind of managing the COVID-19 crisis. And now it becomes even more destructive and chaotic. And of course, these pictures are shocking the world, and it's global. Everybody in the world has seen this murdering. And this is not only one case, this is what happens so often. And well, I'm shocked too. I'm really touched by it deeply. And on the other hand, I think, well, this is what ever all the time has been under the cover, under the curtain, that this country has this huge sin of slavery about hundreds of years, millions of people threatened and treated so badly, and that has to come up, and the Americans have to face their history and their past even more than they already did. So I think this is important for the United States. When I was in the United States, and I appreciate it very much, I love all the people I met, but on the other hand, I think there is anxiety because of so many things that are not faced and looked at what happened in the past. And that makes weak, and that makes creating violence, not facing truly, really what happened and what is still happening. And so not to run away from it by some ideologies that we are the biggest, we are the greatest, always the United States are the best in the world, and so on. This is not humane, man. It's not strengthening the people. It is an illusion. And I guess this great, wonderful country has to face what happens in the bad way in the country, and yeah, to work on it.
Mhm. Mhm. So, Diana and I, as Black Americans, we've been aware of, the existence of just a systemic racism that has been in this country really since its birth, since before it was born, pre-United States, since the early days of colonialism, where this country was built on the backs of the enslaved Black folks. So, I'm wondering, our ostensible topic here is UBI, and you know, I think that the topics are related in that in addition to the brutality and the terroristic activities that Black folks have suffered at the hands of America since we've been here. We've also been systematically marginalized economically, and I'm heartened that. Well, yeah, I guess it's a double-edged sword again. The pandemic has brought to light so much of the economic inequities in this country, and when you see some 40 million folks unemployed, you're starting to see mainstream America. When I say mainstream, I mean white America and middle class white America is now starting to feel what it's like to be without, to not be able to pay your bills, to not be able to feed your family, and to not know where your next meal is coming, something that many Black Americans have dealt with all our lives for generations. So in a sense, a lot of those folks, I believe, are starting to wake up, and I think it's a process. I think it's far from over. This pandemic, I think, is nowhere near finished. I don't know what you think, Diana, but I've seen what looks like a real relaxing in some of the uh, personal care procedures, you know, in terms of the mask and etc., because of the warm weather. So much more congregating. And then now that we see all of the marches that are happening, New York, California, all across the country, folks congregating, that's got to, in my mind, that's got to feed into probably another round of infections. And this pandemic thing is going to be with us a while. I'm wondering whether you guys see any of the positivity that I don't know if I'm hoping for this or actually seeing it, but some of the consciousness raising that that's happening across America because of the pandemic and because of the racial violence now that has been put on the front pages of newspapers and TVs and computer screens and smartphones all across the planet. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to say this. I was just downstairs with some of the volunteers, and they just informed me that there was a report that in the last couple of days, the hospitals have increased in a few numbers, of people who are sick, and it's turning out to be the virus. So it is happening. It is already increasing. And yes, we're rather laxed because of the weather. But then again, with everything happening, there's a lot of social gathering because of their protesting. So they are lax in their care, self-care. So I believe we are going to see an increase. Now, mind you, as it gets hot, remember they said that virus is going to be killed by hot weather, by the heat. So it might decrease, but for some odd reason, I think it's going to be hidden. And we're going to have a very interesting season coming up in September.
I think you're right. Now, what's your feeling, Diana, in terms of the mindset of folks? And in particular, I know you live in Harlem, you might not be interacting as much as some others with people of the Caucasian race. Are you seeing any consciousness raising, any, you know, I guess we're looking at TV and seeing some of the stuff that's going on. What's your sense of what's going on with the rest
of? Actually, I do. It's just like yesterday, they called me down to, excuse me, an emergency rally. So I'm constantly in mixed crowds. Okay. But yes, mainly I'm here in Harlem. And the fact is, it's being lax in every community. Very few, except for, I'm going to say, the senior community. A lot of them are still very cautious. But the younger generations, they're rather lax in their protectiveness of this.
Now, you know, what's your latest take on what's going on with UBI and how that is, how COVID-19 is maybe accelerating or helping to push that forward? I know I did hear just yesterday, the day before, Kamala Harris come out and say that she wanted to see basic income of $2,000 a month to all Americans for the duration of the virus. And actually, she said for 3 months after the virus is completed. And so I'm starting to hear at least more calls for UBI. What's your take on things?
Well, yes, because with this crisis, first, so many things changed rapidly, which was not to think about before. It was all, everything was about economy, and suddenly the economy collapsed, not by the virus, by the measures of the governments worldwide. It's a global phenomenon, it's a global pandemic. And this makes it people start to think different and to believe in change, because there's this experience now that things can change from today to tomorrow, absolutely, and so heavily for all of us. By this reason, many people are encouraged now to go for and to argue and to work for an unconditional basic income. The topic got a huge push by this coronavirus crisis. And second, of course, because so many people do have no income, because they cannot earn money, because shops are closed, meetings are prohibited, and so on and so on. So that there is the experience now that work and income are two different things. You need an income to buy what you need. And you see, the productivity in all the countries is huge enough, is good enough to provide all of us with everything we need, even if there are so many people unemployed now with no income. So that makes a little bit an experience of what UBI is saying, that everybody needs an income, a basic purchasing power. And if this basic income would have been implemented before the crisis, the society would be much more resilient and stable, because there's this opportunity for everybody to buy what he or she needs and to stay capable for action. So that this crisis makes clear that an unconditional basic income for all Americans, for all people in every country, is needed when we have such crisis again, or if this crisis is going on for a longer time. And we can expect that there is a next crisis soon, whether it is coronavirus, Corona-19 again in the next wave, or whether it is COVID-20, COVID-21, or any other virus, or what crisis ever. So we learn by this crisis that we cannot trust only jobs to provide incomes, paid jobs. This is an old ideology. We have to spread and deliver income to everybody first by a basic income, that everybody has this basic income to secure the life, to make sure that you can survive. It's not a problem of the economy. You see that the economy is so productive. Automation, robots, everything, it's running, it's going, it doesn't need so many people. And this is the huge problem, or the huge question of the 21st century, when automation and digitization progress even more and rise even more, and will reset more human work, that the question of what is specific human work, what's the work we have to do, and what is if work is no longer connected in either case by an income. So we have to rethink our income contribution, and COVID-19 gives a huge push to this, to think free about a new society, a new kind of income distribution for all Americans, or for all people in other countries too. And I think this is a good thing by the COVID-19 crisis, even if it's so horrible and bad, that people are encouraged and pushed to think about what is the society we want after the crisis. So do we want to go back to what was normal and what was for so many people a catastrophe? What is the society we want to live in? I guess this is the biggest hope or challenge that we can see in this crisis.
Yes, I agree. I see the economic crisis unfolding and evolving when perhaps the health crisis abates somewhat. Those 40 million folks that are out of work, all those jobs are not going to be there. I'm sure business is going to adjust and see that, oh wow, I'm able to downsize my physical footprint. I'm able to outsource my work to virtual workers, and able to cut my overhead 50% by downsizing in those ways. And I've learned to adapt without a large part of my workforce. So I suspect a huge proportion. I've read 40% or more of what I've read from some experts. 40% or more of the jobs that have gone away will not come back.
Absolutely.
And so many
course, what you're saying, in that we have to shift our thinking and the way that we operate away from jobs and focus on income.
Absolutely. So many companies are in debt now. They will die. So many companies will go bankrupt after the crisis or in this year. And so many jobs and so many businesses that people built up over years by all their efforts are gone and will not come back. So we have to rethink that way, that we are looking, hey, what is life? And we see life is also work. People want to do things. People want to be appreciated, want to help others, want to do something that makes the world a little bit better. That's what we all want. So life is work, and work is an important expression of what your life is. You want to find yourself in the community, in the circumstances where you fit in, and where you have the feeling that you are needed, you are asked, all that. So that makes a feeling of sense. And sense is necessary to feel, to have a meaning in your life, is so necessary for everybody, like to have something to eat. And then we can see, okay, but this is not the same like an income. So this is work. And there is so much work around us everywhere. So to help neighbors, to have a time to work on your traumas, to have social relationships, to help other people, to help nature, to recreate the destroyed nature, to build on new forms of economy, of politics, of everything, to become much more sensible about how other people are feeling, and so on, and so on, and so on. We are in the 21st century. We are not in the century of industrialization. We are in a century where people have to ask themselves, what is my contribution to the society? Where do I feel meaning of my life? And all this is not necessarily bound by a paid job. So you see, the paid jobs for so many millions of people are more and more bad jobs, underpaid jobs, low paid jobs, and so on, because this is a system and a thinking that no longer runs, that no longer works because of that. So jobs are great, and to earn money is a great thing, and I want to become rich and all that stuff, that's okay. But this is an exception. For the people and the society, we have to understand that there is the need of the freedom to work, and that income enables people to work. So the order is not you are working and then you get an income, because to be able to work, you need an income. First, you need an income, then you can live, then you can work. So an income enables people to work. The lack of work is the lack of income, not the other way around. So we have to pay all people first an income. Why? Because you are a human being, because you are a member of our society, because you are valuable, because I appreciate you, even if you are in another style, living another standard, living other ideas, whatever. But the basis is, like the human rights are based on the same understanding and experience, that we appreciate each other as human beings and as members of the society. So, and this is enough to give the people the right to live. And you know what the right to live is? That's an income. An income gives you the right to live. Everything else is nice, blah, blah. An income is factual, the right to live, because this is the right to take for your life what other people have. And that is how society works today. We are living from what other people has done. Nobody can live from what they themselves are doing. Everybody lives from what other people did. So this is the social community, a social society we are living in. But there's the ideology of profit is everything, and economy is a war of everybody against everybody. And all these ideologies are not factual and not true and not helpful and no future. So an unconditional basic income will be necessary for the United States and for other countries as well, because we are in a new time. And in this time, work is more and more done. So the work we did as human beings in the past is more and more done because we created it in such a good way that it can be taken over by machines. And the question is, what is the work of human beings now? There's no lack of work, but there's a lack of sensibility, awareness, and feeling for that work is my decision, what I contribute to society, and it is not for my survival. So it's not simply like in the Middle Age or in the Stone Age that we are working to survive. We are working to provide other people with good things and to change the world for a better, a little bit. So this is the idea of an unconditional basic income, and it is affordable, of course, and that's what we see too. Now the governments can pay trillions, billions, whatever. And this is a huge topic to talk about how can we finance such an unconditional basic income. But because before we are going in some hours of discussion, I can say I'm researching on it since 14 years, and it is affordable. And this is an agreement, so many scientists and researchers agree with it. So this is not the huge question whether it is to finance or not. The question is whether we are brave enough and encouraged enough to think about such an unconditional basic income. It's much more a psychological problem than a financial problem, and psychological because this forces the people and challenges the people to think by themselves, what is my life? How do I want to live? And how do I see my neighbors?
Diana?
Well, I have a question. It's been burning. It doesn't have anything to do with exactly what you're talking about, but you remember Spain said they were going to start a basic income. You're a researcher. Have you been following what they've been doing? How
So
far are they on this?
Yeah, what they do is to give money to the very poor families in the countries. So in Spain, they have had social security benefits for the people. That was not nationwide. In some states, yes, in some states not, and very low, on a very low level. So what they do now is because of the COVID-19 crisis and the crisis because of the message of the government, they have, I don't know how many, some 10,000s of households. They will give them without strings attached, in a way unconditional, an amount that enables people on a very, very low level to survive. So this is more or less social benefits for a huge number of households. This is not an unconditional basic income, not a universal basic income. And I guess it's even not high enough to live from. But they are talking about it with the name of basic income. And you see, this is happening often, that governments now implement payments for the poor and name it basic income. And that makes evidence that this idea of an unconditional basic income is on the political agenda. So even if they don't do an unconditional basic income like we say what it is, they are making steps in that direction. And in Spain, I know there are many people knowing in the political parties what an unconditional basic income is, and they strive to come to it and they want to implement it. So this is not without consciousness. This is not because they don't know what it is. They want to implement that and they want to go more steps to it, and they want to have this payment for the very poor families in Spain nationwide continued after the crisis. And now, of course, there's a political party struggling that the conservatives say, no, it's only in the crisis, and then we have to quit it again. And the others say, no, we have to go forward. You know, this new ideas like an unconditional universal basic income, it's a huge idea. It is the same like, let's say, because that is a topic, abolishing slavery. That is a humane idea, a moral idea, an idea of from the experience of a human being. This is very high, like an unconditional basic income. But it happened that slavery was abolished, not by
Mhm.
that reasons, but by the reasons that Lincoln wanted to keep the nation together, to prove that democracy is strong. That was a
Mhm.
reason for the Civil War.
Mhm.
Um, and the reason was that in the upcoming industrialization in the northern parts of the United States, slaves are no longer needed. It was much too much effort to take care for the whole life, night and day, and to be bound to
Mhm.
those people
Okay.
so absolutely. It was much better to have these people as a slave only from 9 to 5 or to 10 or whatever in the
It's a
time
job.
of the work,
That's what we have
and
today.
then having nothing to do with them, being
Yes,
not
A
responsible
job.
for anything.
yes.
This is just an example that those, let's say, absolutely human, civilized ideas are implemented mostly often by other reasons and by catastrophes and not because of the greatness and of the idea. And I think it will be the same with an unconditional basic income. That, for example, this crisis is pushing this forward, even if it's not an unconditional basic
Right.
income.
Right.
And then a next step and a next step. And finally, we will have it. And then always abolishing slavery is for me such a great example. So, how long does it need that this really happens? After abolishing slavery, the life was even worse for so many Black people in the United States with no
Mhm.
money, and the former slaveholders hired them for very, very low wages and treated them the same way
Inhumane.
like before.
Mhm.
So, and this needs time, time. And you see that now in the United States. It's, I don't know, 250 years ago or something like that. But it's still a topic. And I guess such an idea, like an unconditional basic income, will come forward in this country, in that country, one step, the next step, and so on and so on. And it will need a long time because it has to do with old patterns of thinking and emotions, old old habits and so on. And it needs generations to come to a real universal unconditional basic income. But nevertheless, we have to fight for that now, and we have to push it now, and we have to be as quick as possible. And I hope it will need only a few years to have it in some states of the
Mhm.
United States.
Yeah, well, I certainly believe that these overlapping crises that we're going through now are accelerating that transformative thinking. I really hope and believe that. You know, I was listening to the governor of New York, Governor Cuomo, a few days ago. He does his daily briefing on the status of COVID, and he was talking about. I don't think he called it unconditional basic income, but he was
He
talking about
didn't, but
but
he
he
was
talked about
speaking.
the need for money, the need to spread more money around, and something that I had never heard a politician say before was that the government has a money printing press in the basement. They can print whatever money
They
we need.
want.
Now, we've always said that, but of course you have the rhetoric of the Republicans about budget balancing and this, that, and the other. But to hear this sitting governor say that the government can print any money that we need, and we have certainly seen just in the last 3 months the trillions of dollars that came from who knows where that got put out into the economy.
Yeah,
So,
this is
yeah, I think is right on target when he says the thinking has to change, and to me, the thinking is changing right in front of us. Diana, do you see that?
It absolutely is. This is why we heard, Kamala Harris talk about the basic income. There's another congressman out there in California who spoke with Mayor Tibbs about the same thing. It is, their minds are changing. They're becoming more aware, because it's not just that the crisis of this coronavirus has hit us. With this uprising, this crisis that we just went through, we have cities and now states being burned out, being torn up. How are they going to recover? There is a stimulus package out there, but it hasn't been sent to everyone. If it's sent to everyone, it's still going to miss a lot of people. How are they going to live? There are a lot of people who are property owners decided that they want their rent. When this is over, they want their rent. Where are the people going to get the money from when they haven't had a universal basic income sent to them? They have no job, and all they have is accumulated bills. So the conversation is on a lot of forward thinking people, politicians, and others, and it's coming to the forefront.
Mhm. Yeah, to me, there's a kind of a rolling crisis that has not yet really bubbled up as much as I think it will, and it's probably going to be a year, 18 months, maybe 2 years, all in the making, before we see all the effects of COVID and the economic dislocation and the raising of people's consciousness around the treatment of African Americans and the marginalization of so many folks, Black and otherwise, in this country. To me, all that is kind of just a pot that is cooking right now, and we have yet to see the results of how it's all going to play out.
I think last time, you spoke on the difference between a basic income and a stimulus package, but for those new viewers, would you like to explain that again, please?
The definition of an unconditional basic income?
And can you compare it with a stimulus package?
Stimulus package? Tell me what exactly.
Well, that's what our government is giving us right now. I guess I can explain
yes.
it, which
Yes,
is a
yes,
one-time.
Yes. Okay. So yeah.
Yes.
The stimulus package, that is confronting the need in this crisis. It is because people do not have any money, and you need to give them anything to survive. Otherwise, you have a revolution and civil war and so on. This is just triggered by the current need, and it's a help, and it's too less to help the people. An unconditional basic income is very different from this. So the idea of an unconditional universal basic income is that you have to be free to decide about your own life. And you can only be free if you are not forced to do what other people tell you to do just because you cannot survive without money from any job. So the privacy of people should be protected, and that means the basic needs in form of a basic income should be covered unconditional. The right to live should be given unconditional. And as I said, the right to live is an income. That is the factual right to live. So this is the idea of an unconditional basic income, that people need to be responsible for their lives, able to decide what they want to do or don't want to do, that they are flexible, and that they have a free basis for all what they do. In addition, of course, you earn money, like today, by a job or whatever. It's not so much what is changing, because people are keen on having more money, and people want to prove themselves in professional activities, and to get an appreciation and whatever, and money, and the right social status they desire to have, and so on and so on. This is usual, this is normal, this continues. An unconditional basic income is not the promise of the Holy Land. but it is to set the people free on that level of the basic needs. And this is for everybody. So this is regardless whether you are rich or poor, employed or unemployed, whether you are nice or ugly, woman or man, everything like that. This is targeting, focusing only on the individual human being. That is where we all are equal, whether we are rich or whatever. We are all equal in that we are human beings. And a necessity for us human beings here on earth is to have the basic, to get what we need for our life, the basics. So, and this should be given for free. This should be given to everybody in an appreciation and awareness of your individual human being, where we all are equal. We are very different by our individualities, but this is where we are equal. So, and yeah, that is the idea of an unconditional basic income. It is not regarded to specific needs and demands. It is not regarded to any status. It is not class struggling. It's not the rich have to pay for the poor and all that stuff. It is that we give a society a basis of, if you want so, unconditional love. It's just the basis. So we can fight against each other how much we want, but the basis is to say, well, welcome on earth, good to have you here, and now I'm wondering what you will do with your life. I'm curious about your capacities. So this is the idea of unconditional basic income.
That's interesting. You said, the question is, well, what will you do with your life? This is part of the argument. The argument is that, well, there are some people who will drink it away. There's some people who use it for alcohol. There's some that will gamble it away.
Right.
That
There
is
are
the
so many,
argument
yeah.
I've heard. So,
Yeah,
I hear what you're
everybody.
saying and I believe, but, how do we respond to that?
Yeah, the arguments are people will get lazy, people need the structure of the job market, people need to be pushed. Not everything in life is by your free will. Many things are forced, and then after that they are good for you and so on. People will go on drugs and gambling and so on. Well, first, ask yourself, that's my answer to all those people who say, oh, nobody will work longer on with non-conditional basic income. I always ask back, what's with you? And you know what? 90% of the people answering, so me, that's different. I will work further on. It's always about the other. And that's interesting because if 90% of the people who are arguing people will become lazy are telling it's different for me. I do my job because I studied it, I built it up, I have fun with it, and so on and so on. But people think about the others, that the others are lazy. So this is a psychological problem. It's a cultural problem. It's not the truth. I can tell you some examples what are very interesting for me by this, for example, this argument of people will drink alcohol. In Namibia, they made a basic income pilot project. Before that, in a village, before that, it was cool for the young men to drink alcohol, very bad stuff, big bottles, because everything was so hopeless, without future, desperate. And so it was cool to be drunken. But then the unconditional basic income came in that community for 2 years, and everybody could do something. And now it was no longer cool to drink alcohol. The young ladies didn't like the young men who drink alcohol. That are the weak ones. So an unconditional basic income opened the gate to become active, to become an entrepreneur, to do this and that and that. And primarily the women did that. So the men are a bit lazy. The women are the more capable and more entrepreneurial persons. But drinking alcohol decreased rapidly. Prostitution decreased rapidly. What is the name for shooting wild animals?
Hunting?
Say it again.
Hunting?
Stu? Yeah.
Talking about hunting? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wildering. So illegal killing
poaching,
of what?
poaching.
Yeah, right,
Poaching.
decreased. People became more independent from monopolists and could build up their own little companies, could buy food in the next big city for lower prices and start a little business and break the power of the monopolies. Or another example is homeless people and alcoholic people in London, heavy alcoholic people in London. The government of London paid so thousands and thousands of pounds for trainee programs, for people who take care of them, for all that and that and then. And at one day they said, it's too expensive. They don't change their behavior. We don't do anything for them any longer. We just give them unconditional, a basic income, high enough to live and even a little bit more. So it was much more cheap than all the expenditures before, all the programs, everything like that. They expected that now they will die. They will drink themselves to die. But what happened in that moment where there has been no people talking to you, making suggestions, putting you in programs, everything like that, all this determination from outside stopped, ended, and they just have had the responsibility for this amount of money, what they owned. It was their money, my money. So the most of them stopped drinking. Many went back in their families or went to rent an apartment for themselves. Some got an employment again. More than 50% of those heavy alcoholic, long-time homeless people changed their life in that moment where they got the responsibility and the capability in their own hands and no longer were treated like the bad ones, the weak ones, you know, and you know this from yourself. Everybody, I guess, every listener can look to him or herself and see that's right. Something is right about that. So the situation today of people which are so long-term homeless or long-term in a very bad situation is a little bit caused because they don't get the trust from other people. People don't come to them and say, I trust you. They always say, I don't trust you. You cannot get cash. You have to get food stamps. You are not capable to be responsible for your children, not capable for your life, for be responsible for your life. They are always told those things. They are never given trust. And you know what? I talked with a street worker from Los Angeles, and he worked with gangs in Los Angeles. And what he made was to give the gang people trust. And that changed everything. So everybody of us need someone who believes in you. Someone who believes in you. That is strengthening you. And that is what we need. And that is, in a way, an unconditional basic income, that we say to each other, you know, I believe in you. I trust you. You can do it. And that makes you waking up. So this is the argument, the argument, people are getting lazy. Yes, because today many people are getting lazy. And you know what? In jobs, so many people are doing no interesting things. There are so many bullshit jobs just to keep the people busy. We have so many meaningless work. We have so many work that just destroys the world and makes bad atmospheres. So today, people are lazy often because work has no meaning. The job has no meaning. And that is a healthy reaction to become lazy. If you are forced to do things you don't believe in, you don't appreciate that, you don't value that, you see it's nothing, it's bullshit. So laziness is a good reaction. Also sometimes for pupils in schools where all this is very bureaucratic and not good for your life. without that, if you are capable to do what you really want, you will find what you really want. I talked with so many people who said, I'm doing this job today, I'm unhappy with it. And then I said, but what was it what you wanted to do when you was 17 or whatever? And he said, I don't know, nothing. And then I insisted to ask further on. And then he came up, yeah, I wanted to be this and that, but I couldn't do that because it was not paid. I needed to look for something what was paid, and that was not me. You know, with an unconditional basic income, you can be yourself and do what you are and what you really want to do, and where you can develop yourself, and where you can contribute in a trustworthy, authentic, and healthy way to the society. So weakness is a result of no meaning. And alcohol and drugs is the same. I will tell you an example. I told it sometimes before. Drugs. An experiment with a mouse. A mouse in a, what is it, cave?
Okay.
And there was water to drink, clear water, and water mixed up with drugs. So this single lonely mouse tried the one, tried the other, and decided more and more, drink drugs. Water with drugs is better. So the mouse was always stoned. People said, okay, this is drugs are attractive for people. They have appeal. People will take drugs if they can get drugs. Then another experiment was started. Many mouses in a place. So a family, social community of mouses. Clear water, water with drugs. Well, the mouses checked it out, tested water with drugs, clear water, or water with drugs is bad. Clear water is better. All the mouses decided clear water because there was a social group, a social relationship. So the mouses are connected. And this, I guess, is the same by human beings. If people have the feeling, I cannot come down on earth with my feet in this society, I'm not understood, I'm outside, I'm lonely in a way. Because what I feel is not existing in the society and the structures that are much too hard for me, then this is a feeling of loneliness, being alone. And then it's attractive to have this world of illusions and this world of another fantasy with drugs. But if you can be in the society, you fit in the society, and that is much more possible with an unconditional basic income than if you have to take any job that gives you the money to survive, even if you don't like it and you don't care. So you have a much stronger society with an unconditional basic income, and that is less drugs, you know, because there's less loneliness and less feeling of nobody understands me, nobody knows who I am. There's no place for me on earth to be. So I need to have a living in the clouds of drugs, you know, and it's cool to take drugs and all that stuff. It's not cool if you can do things, if you can be clear, if you can act, if you can work, if you can change the world. And again, as horrible as the situation is currently, this catastrophe could move people, some people, many people, to the idea that we have to take our fate in our hands, that we have to shape the society by ourselves. And that's what I say. This is the lucky thing of Trump in the United States, that people stop waiting on a better president, so a better king, a better God that is doing everything for them. So they have to take it in their hands, and that's what Bernie Sanders said, and that's what many of the Democratic candidates for presidency said and know, like Kamala Harris and so on. I think there are so many brilliant people, and most of the American people are brilliant people, and we need to come away from the understanding of feudalism, where the king is doing it, the president is doing it, the greatness of our army is doing whatever, but we are doing it, and we are creating and shaping the society we want to live in. And you need to be sensible for that. And that's what I'm saying. The work in the future is much more work with sensitivity, sensibility. It's much more psychological than it was in the past. This is the future, and an unconditional basic income is needed to set the people free to work that way.
Yeah, just I couldn't agree with you more. So well said. As you talked, one of the notions that just kept hitting me was just the whole notion of paternalism and how society and corporations decide what you need, decide what's good for you, decide what work you should do, and all along they're working on their agenda, not your agenda. And what unconditional basic income starts to do is to take that veneer away and tell folks to stand up on their own and look inside themselves and decide what it is they want to do. What is their purpose? And it fosters independence and self-reliance, which is something that, we all need to feed our own growth. Yeah.
And this idea is so basically American. So I think this is so much American. And just because so many Americans are no longer Americans, they don't understand that idea and the freedom and the challenge that is included in that. It's not more comfortable with an unconditional basic income. It is much more challenging you. It is much more self-responsibility. It's much more that you have to create and find your own identity. It is just to set the people free to do that, to give them the opportunity, the basis to do those things that are so much American in our century, not in the 18th or 17th century.
Diana, looked like you want to say something there.
Well, I was just, really thinking about how, and I know we're pressed for time, but the Canadian project is what you had mentioned to me a while back. And I would really like to maybe in the future have that young man that wrote about the Canadian project.
Yeah, he made a
as a
film about
guest
it.
to tell
Ken
how
Fisher.
it went. Yes. I really feel that's pretty close to America. So I thought
Yeah,
that
it
might
is.
be something.
And it was the same time when in the United States, in several states, also pilot projects or test projects in the direction of an unconditional basic income took place. It was a mixture of negative income tax, Milton Friedman, and Mincome, an idea what is similar to that, but where the amount is paid out to every family and not only in the case of poverty. So there has been pilot projects in the United States, and it was successful in a way, but it was so complicated that the interpretation of the results were more or less in the hands of the interest of this or that party. So the one said, well, that was bad because marriages were divorced. So women went away from their husbands. That's bad. The truth was, because of this unconditional payment, women were more capable to run away from their drunken, violent husbands, treating them horrible. So if you make the interpretation, oh, that was a bad thing or it was a good thing, depends on how you look on it. And some said people stopped working. Well, bad thing. But the truth was, some people, in particular unemployed people looking for work, looking for a job, took a little bit more time to look for a real sustainable next employment, not any shit. So, and that is a good thing. So that they take the time to take the next job that don't make them ill, don't make them sad, and so on, and is more sustainable. Well, there has been pilot projects in the United States in the 70s and also in Manitoba in Canada. And that project in Manitoba was more one block. It was, you could research about that better. And the results are the same like every pilot project. So the results are people are more satisfied, less violence, less domestic violence, less accidents, less time in hospitals, so it's less diseases, in particular mental diseases decreased. Young people went back to school to finish their education and to get a higher degree, to get a better job and to be capable to earn more money. So young people who left the school because they needed money and they took any bullshit job, or not bullshit, but any very low paid job because they just need money. And there was no chance of any career, of anything that becomes better. So then with this basic income, they turned back to get a higher degree. And that, for example, is from the practice, from the experience, the argument that is against that argument that people often say that young people will not take the effort to have a high degree if there's an unconditional basic income and they know they can live on it without any effort lifelong. That's not what happens. What happens is that people take the opportunity to come higher, to become better, to become better educated and a better job and earn more money. For example, this is just, there are so many effects of the basic income that all effects are good.
Well, we're kind of winding down here. We've been talking about universal basic income, which in this climate in the U.S. and across the world, where so many folks are now unemployed, where income has been truncated for so many folks, all of a sudden, this is a concept that is starting to get legs, and folks are starting to recognize as something that's important, separate and distinct from a job. And I think that's a big mind shift. And I'm encouraged that in the midst of this crisis, something like UBI is being lifted up and talked about, and even embraced in some quarters. So I want to thank you guys. Any final comments before we sign off?
Well, surprisingly, the final comment is everything is good when it leads to more self-esteem and consciousness and more awareness to how other people feel.
Mm-hmm. Diana, you've got the final word.
Well, it's good to know that this is part of our human right. And I think if we can get our mindset, have a mind change and then a mindset to understanding our right, it's going to change it globally. It will be just great change.
Okay, well, thank you both. You've been listening to Community and Technology with Diana Blackwell and Enno Schmidt. Thank you, guys, and look forward to having you back again next month as we explore this whole issue of unconditional basic income. Thanks again. You've been listening to Community and Technology, WHPR 90.3 FM, streaming live on the Streaming University platform, safeandsmart.org. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks.
I can hear his echo still. Na, na, na.